Every submarine movie claims it's realistic. Almost none of them survive an actual Navy officer's review. So I pulled together every film that submariners themselves voted for, from a Soviet reactor meltdown to a war movie the Navy literally used for training. The story here is based on the real-life meltdown aboard the Soviet submarine K-19 in July 1961, a nightmare situation on the Soviet Union's very first ballistic missile sub. Harrison Ford plays the hardline captain taking over a brand new sub and pushing his crew through impossible tests. When the reactor's cooling system springs a leak, things go from bad to almost world-ending. With no backup and Moscow out of reach, the crew has to improvise a fix inside the radioactive reactor compartment, knowing exactly what it'll cost. This wasn't just made up for drama. The K-19 meltdown really did threaten to trigger a nuclear explosion off Greenland, and real men went in, one after another with makeshift protection, to weld a fix by hand. 7 died within days from radiation exposure, and more followed. The film doesn't sugarcoat it. The sacrifice and desperation are right there on screen. Even the way the movie handles the shipyard scenes and the pressure to get the boat back to sea match real-life accounts. Lieutenant Eric Washkiewicz, who served as a junior officer on a U.S. sub, said the film's opening shipyard scene nails exactly what that job felt like. Caught between getting the ship ready and the constant pressure to get back out there no matter what. The boat is in a league of its own for realism. It follows the crew of U-96, a German submarine in 1941, showing the reality of what it means to live and fight undersea. Every detail was nailed down for accuracy. The film is based on Lothar Günther Buchheim's novel, itself built on his time as a war correspondent on a real U-boat. Many incidents are pulled straight from war logs, stalking convoys, depth-charge nightmares getting stuck at the bottom. None of it is one big battle. It's a composite of real events that happened again and again during the Battle of the Atlantic. What sets the boat apart is how seriously the production took authenticity. The U-boat set is an exact hydraulically tilted replica. The actors weren't just told to look scared, they trained as submariners, learned to move and work in those cramped spaces, stayed out of sunlight to match the look of real crews. Even Heinrich Lehmann Willenbrock, U-96's real captain, and Hans-Joachim Krug, a real first officer, were consultants. But it's not just the tech. The boat shows what the life really did to these men, their exhaustion, the way they fought to do their jobs under insane odds. Admiral Robert Burke of the U.S. Navy put it best. You can feel the crew's hopes and dreams as well as their fear and claustrophobia. You relate to the crew because they are like sailors in any navy, doing their jobs to the utmost and fighting for survival against an unforgiving adversary and sea. This one is a French thriller about a young sonar expert on a nuclear sub who ends up at the center of an international crisis. His ability to read underwater sound makes him the key to stopping a potential nuclear war when France and Russia are at a standoff. Most submarine movies go big on spectacle, but The Wolf's Call puts everything on the split-second decisions that define real sub-warfare. The director, Antonin Baudry, actually worked as a diplomat, and it shows. He loads the story with the kind of military and political details most scripts miss completely. French naval officials were so impressed they encouraged their own crews to see it. Baudry filmed on real French Navy submarines to get the details right, down to the organization on board and how sound analysis actually works. The result? Critics gave it 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, called it pulse-pounding, and the kind of tense, technical thriller you don't see anymore. U.S. Naval Institute veterans put it in the top tier for authenticity, with Captain Bill Tody calling it the most realistic since The Boat. Nothing recent gets as close to the acoustic game of phones. And Lieutenant Commander Marcelo Martinez said it got the operational side almost exactly right, even down to the sound analysis. The fact that this film made that kind of impact both inside and outside France says everything. This one is a made-for-TV movie, but it's not just some cheap drama. It tells the real story of the Soviet submarine K-219, which caught fire and suffered missile explosions off the U.S. coast in 1986. Rutger Hauer plays Captain Brittanoff, who's forced to fight off radiation leaks and keep his crew alive. All the while, the whole world's watching to see if the Cold War is about to turn hot. The U.S. Navy denies anything to do with the accident, but the film tracks close to what's in the official logs and survivor accounts, the same story as in the non-fiction book it's based on. There's a legal twist, too. Captain Brittanoff himself sued Warner Brothers for using his story without permission and for making him look incompetent. He won the case in 2004, though nobody really knows how much he got. Some call it substantial damages, others say it was only tens of thousands. Either way, Hostile Water stands out for two reasons. It gets the technical side right for a TV movie, and it doesn't gloss over the human cost. You can't talk about sub-movies without The Hunt for Red October. Based on Tom Clancy's bestseller directed by John McTiernan, this one takes a true Cold War scenario. Soviet captain breaks orders and runs for the U.S. with a next-gen submarine. The tension comes from nobody knowing if he's defecting or starting World War III. The movie keeps you guessing alongside the CIA, the Navy, and everyone else. There's no spoon-feeding, just a dense, clever story that trusts you to keep up. Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin lead a cast that actually feels believable as military professionals. The movie gets praised by everyone from Quentin Tarantino to Roger Ebert, who called it an exercise in military and diplomatic strategy, not just another thriller. The Navy praised it too. Not for everything, some of the ship driving gets a little sci-fi, but the professional dialogue and routines are spot on, according to Admiral Jonathan Greenert, former Chief of Naval Operations. No sub-movie is perfect, but this one gets the core details right enough that real-life officers respect it. This one is a TNT historical drama about the Confederate submarine H.L. Hunley in the American Civil War. Lieutenant George Dixon leads a volunteer crew on a hand-cranked death trap that would change naval history. The story centers on the real-life attack on February 17, 1864, when the Hunley snuck up on the USS Housatonic in Charleston Harbor and became the first submarine to ever sink an enemy ship in wartime. The attack was a turning point, showing what subs could do, even if the victory was short-lived. The Hunley took out the Housatonic with a spar torpedo, lost 5 Union sailors, and then the sub itself went down with all 8 crew. Pyrrhic win, but it started a new era. The movie sticks close to what's known from the records. It's honest about how dangerous those first subs really were, how deadly each test run felt, and how there was no escape if something went wrong. The whole climax, the actual attack, the torpedo, and the loss of the crew gets shown exactly as it happened. The film gives you a real sense of what Civil War Charleston was like under siege. There are some details that couldn't be right since the film was made before the Hunley was recovered and not all the crew identities are clear, but as a whole it's about as accurate as you could get at the time. Hell Below goes in a totally different direction. This is a World War I story and one of the few sub-movies about that era. The U.S. Navy sub AL-14 heads to the Adriatic Sea in 1918, with Robert Montgomery's Lieutenant Tommy Knowlton clashing with his new commander. Historically, this movie actually nails a lot of the details. The filmmakers even used a real decommissioned World War I destroyer, USS Moody, to stage the ship sinking. They rebuilt missing sections and used real scuttling charges to simulate a torpedo hit. The movie pulls some story ideas from the Zeebrugge raid, where the British tried to block German U-boats from leaving port by sinking old ships in the canal entrance and attacking the viaduct. The war action in the film holds up, especially at sea. The melodrama and romance subplot, though, drags everything down. If you skip that part, you get a solid war picture. An American destroyer, USS Haynes, tangles with a German U-boat in the South Atlantic. Robert Mitchum plays the American captain, Kurt Jürgens the German skipper, and the whole movie is just a deadly chess match. This movie's technical accuracy is a big reason why it stands out. The production team brought in Albert Beck, a real former German U-boat sailor, as a consultant. The destroyer scenes used real U.S. Navy ships like USS Whitehurst, which actually saw World War II service. Director Dick Powell kept things lean, Just 98 minutes focused on the tactics and tension with very little filler. The end is a little corny, but the cat and mouse dynamic and the respect between the captains feels genuine. Even Navy veterans and critics give it respect. Theodore Kuhlmeier from United States Naval Academy put it simply, "The Enemy Below is the best World War II submarine movie. The scenes where Jurgen's U-boat was being depth-charged by Mitchum's destroyer made me glad I never had to undergo that experience." Cary Grant plays Captain Cassidy, running a mission so secret he doesn't even get his orders until the sub is out of San Francisco Bay. The job is to pick up a meteorologist, sneak up to the Japanese coast, and gather weather info for the Doolittle raid, the first airstrike on Tokyo. Along the way, they dodge Japanese patrols and end up going toe-to-toe with an enemy carrier. For all the wartime Hollywood spin, the operation of the sub is so well done, the Navy actually used Destination Tokyo as a training film during World War II. The Copperfin, Grant's boat in the film, was built as an exact scale model of a real U.S. Navy sub. Equipment and controls were intentionally mixed up for security reasons, but the real-life crew from the submarine Wahoo served as technical advisors. Yeah, there's plenty of war-era propaganda, no surprise given when this was made, but what stands out is a moment that goes against the grain for war movies at the time. Instead of demonizing the enemy, Cary Grant's character explains how the Japanese airman they captured was raised with Bushido and was fighting for his children and their freedom too. That kind of human moment is rare in films from this era. Phantom sets its story during the Cold War, with Ed Harris as a veteran Soviet captain tasked with a secret mission. The movie borrows from the real 1968 sinking of the Soviet sub K-129, then spins its own plot about a doomsday scenario and a rogue nuclear launch. This part's pure invention, but the atmosphere and tech are rooted in reality. What the film gets right is the claustrophobia of a 1960s Soviet sub, the look, the gear, the way the crew works under pressure. It nails the era's sense of paranoia and how close things could get to disaster. Of course, the Phantom device, a stealth tech MacGuffin, and the mutiny are Hollywood touches, and the movie's not above exaggerating. Still, the bones of the story are tied to a real Cold War mystery, and for authenticity and mood and setting, Phantom does better than most. It's a shame the script doesn't always live up to the cast. Submarine X-1 puts James Caan in charge of a secret World War II unit running British X-class midget submarines. Their mission is to blow up a German battleship hiding in a Norwegian fjord. The film is a loose take on Operation Source, the 1943 raid to attack the Tirpitz. They change the names. The Linendorf replaces the Tirpitz, but the mission is real. It's not a straight documentary, of course. James Caan's Canadian officer is a fictional creation, and the movie throws in a few dramatic subplots, but the guts of the operation are all true to history. The real missions had plenty of loss. The X-3 was lost in training, the crew escaped with the Davis apparatus, X-1 and X-2 were actually given to other navies, and X-7 managed to put charges under the Tirpitz, though the crew were captured. X-5's fate was never confirmed. Greyhound is one of the rare modern naval films that real sailors praise for getting the details right. It's a World War II thriller starring Tom Hanks as Captain Ernest Krause, commander of the destroyer USS Keeling, call-signed Greyhound, leading a convoy through the mid-Atlantic Black Pit in early 1942. There's no air cover, just Krause's crew facing down a wolf pack of German U-boats trying to pick off merchant ships. The plot is fictional, adapted from C.S. Forrester's meticulously researched novel The Good Shepherd, but every detail is rooted in real naval tactics. The film doesn't even bother with melodrama, which is great. It's all about procedure, the tactical choices, and the pressure of protecting lives on the open sea. The events didn't happen, but every bit of it is drawn from what actually went down in those convoys. Historians agree. If you want a sense of what Allied captains really faced, this is it. The stakes were enormous. The supply lines kept the UK alive, supplied the Soviets, and without them, the entire Allied campaign would have collapsed. As historian James Holland put it, had the Atlantic been lost, so too would have Britain. Greyhound nails the reality of that threat and what was at stake every single day. The command tells the true story of the Russian submarine disaster in 2000. The K-141 Kursk, a nuclear sub, suffered a catastrophic torpedo explosion during exercises in the Barents Sea. What follows is a parallel nightmare. Crew trapped below, fighting to survive with no help coming, while up above, the Russian Navy wastes critical time on bureaucracy and pride. Colin Firth plays a British Commodore who offers help, but politics gets in the way. The film pulls directly from journalist Robert Moore's exhaustively researched book, A Time to Die, and director Thomas Vinterberg stays close to the facts: real divers, NATO equipment, even some archival footage. Actual cooperation from the Russian Ministry of Defense fell through, but NATO stepped in to lend gear. The result is a movie that sticks closely to what really happened. Well, at least as closely as they could. The command hits hard because it doesn't sensationalize, just shows the grim reality and the lives that were lost because the people in charge refused to act. This TV film tells the story of the USS Squalus disaster in 1939 when a mechanical failure during a test dive off New England sent the sub straight to the bottom. Sam Neill plays Lieutenant Commander Momsen, who leads the first ever live rescue of submariners using the McCann Rescue Chamber, a diving bell he helped invent. This is the original submarine rescue. 33 men made it out alive. The film adapts Peter Moss's nonfiction account, The Terrible Hours, and keeps every detail accurate. The era's technology, the clock-ticking tension, and the gamble involved in even attempting a rescue. There's no need for made-up drama here. The reality is more intense than anything Hollywood could invent. Submerged is known for sticking exactly to how it happened, and for anyone interested in how naval rescue evolved, it's a must-watch. The Bedford Incident sets up a fictional but totally believable standoff. A U.S. Navy destroyer, USS Bedford, playing cat and mouse with a Soviet sub off Greenland. This actually happened more often than you'd think, especially during the most paranoid years of the Cold War, like the Cuban Missile Crisis. The difference here is the captain, played by Richard Widmark, who pushes his crew to the edge, obsessed with not letting the enemy slip away. What the Bedford Incident gets right is the tension of command, the way mistakes and pressure stack up in an environment where one wrong move can mean nuclear war. The movie's climax, where a simple misunderstanding leads to disaster, was based on real fears from the era. Accidents, near misses, and the terrifying possibility of a nuclear exchange triggered by human error. Forgotten compared to Dr. Strangelove or Fail Safe, but still a great warning about the kind of personalities who can end up in charge of the world's deadliest weapons.